Did you think the speech had the same kind of passion of his campaign speeches?
Well, I didn't think it had the passion. I think it had the formula, though, and kind of a populism type formula. I didn't like what he did with the Supreme Court. I thought that was kind of Bush League. But I liked the message about what happened in that court decision, but I didn't think it was the right place to do it. I think he's coming trying to be a little bit more blue collar. Joe the plumber, remember Joe the plumber? That's the economy. 48% of the speech talked about the economy. And he was much more physical. If you listen to the speech without the sound or take a look at him, he's much more animated. He's trying to show that he's more involved. He's got to get involved because last year he wasn't involved in Washington. He wasn't involved in Congress. And he's trying to show people, I'm going to be there now.
Well, as long as you mention the Supreme Court, let's take a look at that bite when he, with the 6 members of the Supreme Court sitting right in front of him, he really went after the court.
With all due deference to separation of powers, last week the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections.
Clark Haywood, is that a good idea in a speech to go after the Supreme Court? I mean, no other president apparently has ever done that.
Well, they almost shouted back at him. So
they did shout.
Kind of mouthed it rather than shouted. So
right.
I think it was a bit of a risk. I don't think in my circle that attacking the Supreme Court in that particular context is the right thing. Now, he also, to be fair, he then attacked the generals, and they stood stone-faced and perfectly stone-faced, I might say. So he did that. I think that's part of his personality coming through. It is part of his, what we all expect, a magnificent speaker, and he is that. By the way, in another analysis we did, we found that the word jobs was right dead center in what we call a word cloud, and everything focused off of that. So he was on target, and these other activities around it were just part of, I think, his establishing that he's more in charge.
He went after the court. He went after the Democrats. He went after the Republicans.
Right.
He tried to show that everybody's got to come to work here now. Everybody's got to make something happen. Right. And he was calling people out, and that was part of what he wanted to do.
And this is one of the few times he gets to do that.
He kind of tried to have it both ways as well. The first people he went after were the banks. And let's hear what he had to say about the banks.
Our most urgent task upon taking office was to shore up the same banks that helped cause this crisis. It was not easy to do. And if there's one thing that has unified Democrats and Republicans, and everybody in between, it's that we all hated the bank bailout. I hated it. I hated it. I hated it, you hated it. It was about as popular as a root canal.
Serafin, can he have it both ways by saying what he did, but saying, but I didn't really want to do it, I hated it?
He went after every of the big institutions, the lobbyists. He's got 7 on his staff in the White House, but he says they don't belong here in Washington. They're spending too much time taking advantage of the operations in the Congress. He went after every institution. He's trying to be both. And it's going to be very difficult. He tried to do that last year and on the campaign trail. But at some point, you're going to make tough decisions, and some people are going to be cut in, and some people are going to be cut out. And I think the most important thing for this particular administration today is to bring people together. Somebody told me earlier tonight, he should have called out the Republicans that said, tomorrow morning in my office at 7 o'clock. But that puts him and his skin on the table as well. It's easy to be a populist. It's much harder to govern.
Well, he did try to I think much of the speech was trying to bring people together and to stop the infighting in Washington, to sort of get government unstuck.
Well, more than bringing people together, though, he tried to put people on notice that, one, unfiltered, when I have the eye and the ears of the entire nation, I can say that I've invited you to come in. I've asked for new ideas. I've asked for your involvement. Now, if you don't respond, and, you know, that saying no is good politics, but it's bad leadership. So he's undercut what has become a strategy for the opposition. And
did he really undercut it, though? Let's hear what he had to say about that strategy. Let's hear it addressing both Democrats and Republicans.
I would remind you that we still have the largest majority in decades, and the people expect us to solve problems, not run for the hills. And if the Republican leadership is going to insist that that 60 votes in the Senate are required to do any business at all in this town, a supermajority, then the responsibility to govern is now yours as well.
So, Clark Haywood, did this kind of rhetoric, do you think it could make any substantial difference in trying to have some more bipartisan dealings in Congress?
Well, I think he did call him out a bit too much in some spots, but I do think he's gotten a little bit more practical about his legislative experience here. Don't forget, we sent him to Washington without a lot of experience in this particular job, and I think he's had a great year of training. Let's call it an externship for a while.
Did you sense that from the speech, or what?
Well, I think he's admitted that he understood that he walked in. I mean, he had a lot of fact-checking on what he said about Bush and what he inherited and so forth, and he still tried to establish that it wasn't entirely his fault, which it wasn't. So, but that list of bills is one of it would make a perfect book on the subject of reform and progressivism, and I don't think he's going to get them all, and I think he has to wake up and realize that a small percentage of bills pass every year, even if the president says, I want it on my desk.
Well, of course, the bill that they wanted to pass most of all, health care, he didn't get to till considerably into his speech, indicating that he's listening apparently to the public that this is not on everyone else's top priority. But then immediately he went and continued to challenge the Congress on passing health care.
Here's what I ask Congress, though. Don't walk away from reform. Not now. Not when we are so close. Let us find a way to come together and finish the job for the American people. Let's get it done.
But Ken Smichael, did you hear any new strategy or any new plan to get health care passed?
No, but I think what we heard, just as importantly, maybe more important given where he is right now in his governance, is that he had to send a message to those that supported him all along that he's going to fight, and that he expects everybody that supported him to fight along with him, Democrat, independents, whomever. And taking back that message from all of the media gobbledygook that's gone on and continues to go on was a really important task for him to do, and I think he did that very well. That was, for me, job one, connecting again with the base, letting them know that I've got a spine, we need to fight, and the fight goes on.
Governor McConnell's statement afterwards, I don't know if you thought we should even bother to talk about it because it's relatively inconsequential, frankly, but there's still that issue of what the relationships will be between the parties, and it's too bad the Republicans didn't establish themselves as being more high-minded about this and able to make progress on bills that the public would really like, and I think the president is right on a number of those bills, not all of them, but that the McConnell speech, for example, was just one trite Republican knee-jerk kind of comment after another based on the list that he'd been given by the strategist on this. And so it's too bad, but I think the Republicans are going to have to reconstruct their approach back to this speech and see if they can't figure out what their role is.
You know, the president did do one thing that the presidents don't often do. He really did confront voters' anger, his falling poll numbers head on.
Yep.
Let's hear it.
I campaigned on the promise of change. Change we can believe in, the slogan went. And right now I know there are many Americans who aren't sure if they still believe we can change, or that I can deliver it.
Or that I can deliver. What did you think of that?
Well, that's a fact. I mean, people in Massachusetts, you know, Democrat state, people in Virginia, Democrats, New Jersey, Democrats, they're all going in another direction. He's blaming
Does it do any good to admit it?
It does some good to admit it, and then he's got to move forward. But he's got to bring people together. He's going to have to work with the Republicans. The Republicans are trite, but you have to work together in order to get something done. And you have to
be a willingness, Tom.
You have to give a little. You have 59 votes. They control everything in Washington. Give a little. Healthcare, very easy. Everybody can agree on portability. Right. Everyone can agree on the fact that pre-existing conditions should not exist. So pass those two. If the Republicans walk on you, they're dead. Right. So they have to come into the White House. Begin in small bites. He's learning on the job, as the professor says. That's been as big as a Achilles heel.
Everyone learns the presidency on the job.
On that speech? The professor
I'm going to give him a B, B+. I think he's still, the grades are still due at the end of the quarter here.
Right. Ken Smichael?
A-.
I'll give him a B. I think he's trying to move to the center, and he's going to have, he needs to pull the Democrats with him.
All right. Not bad grades. My thanks to Thom Serafin, Ken Smichael, and Clark Haywood.